All righty. I think we can go ahead and dive into it. We're at that classic 2-minute mark. So happy Tuesday, everyone. I am super excited to have you all here. I am joined here by my colleague, the fabulous Sarah Copez. She is our Director of Marketing Ops and Analytics, and I am Anna Charity, our Senior Product Marketing Manager. And today we are going to talk through how to track and measure the impact of buyer intent. So sorry about that, Sarah. I just stole your thunder, but do you want to say hi?
Hi, thanks so much for inviting me to present with you.
Yes, I'm so excited for this. So a couple quick housekeeping things as we do. So there is a raise hand function on Zoom, or feel free to drop a question in the chat at any time. We do have some G2ers online that will be jumping in and answering questions as we go. But if we don't get to them, of course, we'll follow up. Feel free to reach out to us again here or after. You can reach Sarah and I on LinkedIn, or we can provide our emails if y'all want to talk shop. Recording of this will be available on our G2 office hours page. And then also, if you want more technical learnings, our G2U is now available. So huge shout out to Caitlin and Aaron on our customer marketing team for getting that live. So definitely recommend checking that out. We do like to keep these G2 office hours super casual, super conversational. It's a place for us modern marketers to connect, discuss, especially in this time where ROI is super important and we're all just trying to lean on each other. So we are, again, very excited you all are here, and we're really excited to cover this topic today. And it's the first time we've done this at G2. So what we're going to cover, aside from just the broad topic of tracking and measuring, is just generally, why is intent data more important now than ever? Intro to intent signals, just generally, as well as how they are specific to G2's buyer intent, establishing those baselines. So sounds pretty obvious and simple, but that's obviously a crucial component to being able to map back to the ROI at the end of the day. Super excited. Sarah and I have some awesome intent-based tactics to go over. Sarah is a queen and pulls a lot of our levers on the marketing operations side. And then I'm going to be speaking to some of our awesome tactics that our marketing team uses, as well as our customers. And then last but not least, how do you actually measure this? I've been in software a long time. That's always the number one question mark of how do we measure ROI? What's the best way to map back to it, especially when you're using so many different integrations? There's different attribution models. So we're going to talk through that as well. And at the end, again, we'll have time for discussion as needed. Also, I should mention, I'm not going to be strictly monitoring the chat, so feel free, anyone here, to interrupt me on the G2 side if I missed anything. So quick level setting. If you've been on LinkedIn, I'm sure you've been getting a ton of ebooks and ads of how can we help you do more, prove ROI. It's the same message everywhere due to just the economic climate right now. So all marketers, pressure to deliver more leads, more pipeline, more MQLs, more focus on customer renewals, expansion, revenue protection, reducing churn, driving upsell, driving cross-sell, but also, hey, you have less budget. So we're all familiar with that. Less budget, less resources, less technology, tools, headcount, all of it. So it's a common theme, and that's why we're really excited to talk about how buyer intent can support that. So just generally, and I promise I won't spend too much time on this intro, why is buyer intent important? So based on some different surveys done, 87% of buyers research products online before making a purchase. And that's actually relatively low to me. I don't do or buy anything without making a purchase. So I think that will certainly see that number continue to increase. And of course, the nature of our business, you know, in the past, our founder always likes to say, you can research $100 hotel, but before G2, it was so difficult to find some peer resource reviews on $100,000 piece of software. So obviously, as that cost goes up and as our budgets are getting cut, the research is going to become more and more important. But with that being said, only 5% of potential buyers are actually in market at any given time. So again, especially us marketers, we kind of know the flow. So we're not going to go straight to that demand gen form. We're going to do our research, and they're not always in market. But what we like to say is at G2, no one comes here for fun, sadly, although it is a fun place to work. So if they're on G2, they're there to do business. They're there with something in mind, with a goal in mind, and it's likely tied to a business outcome. And then lastly, 62% of consumers say that a brand will lose their loyalty if they deliver an unpersonalized experience. So that one feels a little random, but we'll get to how intent can support that in just a moment. So I'll breeze through here. I know we probably have different levels of the maturity curve in terms of knowledge and understanding of intent, but the basic way to think about it is it's a combination of online activity and engagement that are signaling the likelihood to purchase a product or service. And so with buyer intent, it helps not only marketers, but honestly, sales, customer success, target more effectively, driving that more pipeline, reducing acquisition costs, improving ROI, getting ahead of the competition, and then probably most importantly, decreasing churn. Awesome. So now what we'll do here, if there aren't any questions, I'll go ahead and get into our specific signals that again are specific to G2. So to level set, you all obviously have websites, probably a blog, social media. That's going to be considered your first party data. That's going to be obviously the lowest funnel. If someone's going straight to your website, you know they are here for you. Or evaluating you very closely. Bidstream is going to be available as part of ABM platforms, and that's higher in the funnel as well. Co-op tools like Bombora, also valuable. That's going to be more mid-funnel. B2B media sites like TechTarget, more top of funnel. And then review platforms, of course, like G2, those are going to be very high intent, middle to low funnel, high performing, high interest prospects. Sorry about that. Had a brain fart. So going over our different type of intent signals. So whether you're a G2 customer or not, we have different types of signals that we capture. And then we also have different buying stages that help you interpret these signals. So to put it simply, we have sponsored content visits. So again, those are going to be companies that are putting paid on G2 behind this. Category page visits, so someone just generally visiting your category, such as applicant tracking. G2 profile visits, visiting your profile specifically. A comparison page, someone viewing you and your competitors. Alternatives page, someone looking at just your general category of alternatives, and then pricing page visits. So don't get overwhelmed. While we do capture all of this data and we pride ourselves on the volume of signals that we capture, we also, it's not too noisy. We definitely want to make sure that you're only getting the volume and quality of signals that are going to be valuable for your business. So we have, and we'll get to this in a moment, different buying and activity stage filters that help you interpret where these valuable buyers are in their journey. All right, so we'll go over to establishing baselines. So again, I don't know why this format came over kind of wonky, but Sounds basic, sounds obvious, but again, there's no way to actually measure and anchor to that ROI unless you have these baseline metrics. So we recommend looking at ad spend, such as cost per lead, customer acquisition cost, looking at conversion rates from all stages of the funnel or flywheel, and then of course, average deal size. So increasing that ACV as well. Would love to hear also from anyone else in the chat if there are any other core primary KPI metrics that you all tend to track. These are the ones that, again, we find our customers most likely tracking with intent. All right, and I'm about to finally stop talking in just a minute, but we are going to go over 3 different kind of groupings of intent-based tactics. So to start, we have our account prioritization and scoring, and that's going to help, of course, with maximizing budgets. So I'll kind of rattle through these, but we also have Sarah, who's going to speak to some of these as well. And I love it because she also has like nitty gritty, scrappy firsthand experience with some of this more technical stuff. So one of my favorite use cases is marrying that opportunity data from your CRM. So you'll see here, we have just some of our integrations listed below. So whether you use Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever it might be, layering your high intent, high value signals or prospects that are active within G2 with your opportunities that are potentially lower in the pipeline, and knowing that because they are warm and they're showing active intent, you can layer that over and provide a really powerful story.
Yeah, on that one, Anna, I love looking at intent data on current opportunities, because if I'm a sales rep, I need to know how my opportunities are performing. I want to know ahead of time if they're looking at other competitors. And I think that a lot of this is focused on the marketing side, but I want to call out the very strong use case of intent with sales.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, sales and that Slack integration is huge. Like we all were so excited when that became live, the G2 Slack integration, and our sales teams love it. So we'll definitely talk about that more for sure. The competitive piece is huge. I always love the example too, kind of going back to that Slack example, but let's say you get a Slack alert that your ICP is looking at your top competitor. You can go ahead and go in on that and double click and look at their customer journey within G2 of who they've navigated to, what they've looked at, what are the solutions they've been considering, and also pull in, contact level data as well. And of course, by doing all of this and by prioritizing based on your ICP, you're able to reduce those acquisition costs. So again, you're not having to kind of do that spray and pray methodology. You know your ICP, so does your sales team, and you can really have a lot of impact by maximizing your strategy there.
And I think that's a great call out, because I think a lot of what I hear from intent users is, it is on the account level, not the individual person. But the framing that I always use in those conversations is, your ICP better than anyone else. You're the one who markets to them. You're the one who sells to them. So what I like to do with intent is look at intent on the account level, but then identify the ICP within that. And you can bubble that into your lead scoring and pass them over to sales and create an SLA on when they need to follow up with those leads. Or you can bubble it up into your account prioritization methodology so that sales is only focusing on top tier accounts. And you can also do your campaigns towards those accounts. So using an ABM platform, you can leverage intent within those systems so that you can spend less with a higher output in your performance of your campaign.
Yep, exactly. And I love, this kind of the beauty of the, demand gen side of the house is it's so scientific. So like you can completely adjust that model based on what you consider to be good or bad engagement. And I think that's great to have that power. Awesome. So one of the other ways I want to keep trucking because we have a lot to cover here. Another core way, and we touched on this a bit, but is incorporating intent tactics into your nurtures, your content, and then just really leveling up your customization and personalization. And that can be from every stage. So whether you want to create a hyper customized display ad, or maybe you don't need to create any new content. Maybe you see that someone is firing a signal because they're engaging with your category. You can go ahead and serve up maybe a more top of the funnel piece of content, like a case study, or maybe you see that they're looking at your competitor. You could shoot over a one pager of all the ways your business is better. So those are just a couple different ways that you can think through the personalization component.
Yeah, I love this. I also think it's one of those moments where it's why wouldn't you be doing this within your company? Like, if you have all this great data, you should utilize it in all the campaigns that you're doing. And it ties really nicely back to the story of ROI, because you can then show how you were doing campaigns without intent data and the improvement on the ROI of your campaigns for, impressions, new leads, opportunities, and closed won from leveraging intent. And I think it really tells that powerful story of the benefit that intent can have on your business.
Yes, exactly. And I keep jumping the gun, but I get excited, but it can seem very overwhelming intent. But the best part is there's easy ways to get up and running. You'll hear us reference the Slack integration time and time again, because you just see the impact and the value right away and can quite literally take action on it. But I also love it because like Salesforce, HubSpot, Snowflake is when you get a little more mature. That's one of our newest integrations. But once it's in there, you can plug and play, right? I mean, once you have your integration up and running, you can marry that data and create whatever kind of reports you want. So I think that's so valuable. Awesome. And this is an example, just like more of a visual for how you can picture different engagement across G2 and what you could potentially trigger. So this is just a very, again, example for marketers specifically. But of course, from the sales angle, there's so many different ways that you can jump into this and engage. But again, all goes back to what is their action? What are their previous actions that they've taken? What does that journey look like? And again, how can we serve up right time, right message, right content, right channel that's actually going to convert? Awesome. Just checking this chat here. Looks good. All right. And then lastly, before we get into the good stuff, which is fully what this is about, which is all the tracking and measuring, is the crawl, walk, run approach. So I was talking with Sarah about this yesterday. She was like, everyone uses this phrase, but it's so true. And it's the easiest way to kind of get yourself, dip your toe into the pool, if you will. So with sales, and Sarah, definitely like help me speak to this. I want to make sure I'm keeping you honest here, but I really love that example of like setting up the Slack integration, having sales they know what their ICP is, and kind of validating of like, these are the types of accounts we could convert, and these are the ones that we should continue to pursue.
Yeah, I love your point on working with sales. I think the best way you can get ROI is by including sales as early on as possible and getting them to look at the data and to work together to understand what are the most valuable pieces of intent. So then you can layer that onto things like scoring and prioritization. But having sales invested in the data first is the best way to create that stickiness within your organization and to be able to tell the longevity of the ROI of a platform.
I love it. And isn't that the truth just with everything? I feel like I can say that being a former salesperson, but like getting that sales buy-in, if you don't have that buy-in, it's not going to go anywhere. So I love that. And it's just so nice to have that feedback loop to continue to iterate on, any ICP signal, or not signals, but setup that you might have on the back end, and how you kind of like trigger and automate from that. So
Yeah, and I love what Robin, our VP of marketing over here at G2, she will be in the Slack channel and will be like, how do we target this account? This account is surging. So how do we proactively go out there? And I
yeah,
love that because it starts the conversation of alignment, and she gets to learn from how sales is using the data so we can bring it into our broader campaign approach.
I love that. That's so cool. And that also reminds me of a different way we're using it, but somewhat similarly, is like you could run a spiff with your sales team of like how to target these like high intent accounts. And, everyone is going to be up in that Slack channel. So didn't mean to give Slack integration so much love today, but it really is a great one. And then of course, as I mentioned before, like using ABM platforms, CRMs. I mentioned this before, but using tools like Zoom Info and Cognism to be able to see that contact level data. And then eventually you can graduate to these more robust Snowflake visible dream datas of the world. Awesome. So we are doing okay on time. We have about 6 more minutes. I'm going to keep going, and then we're going to have time for any questions or discussions. But to start, so this is obviously very simplified. We're happy to provide any documentation on how to do this more. But I'd actually, Sarah, can I kick it over to you to talk about like some of the ways you've started, maybe starting with that last bullet of like UTM parameters?
Yeah, this point is generally towards when you're A/B testing campaigns. So say you have an ABM platform running display for you and you want to test the performance of a non-intent driven campaign and an intent driven campaign. You want to be very clear on the UTMs that you're going to use in order to define the differences in the campaign so that you can relate it back on ROI. The biggest thing that I see with other marketing teams today is that showing ROI is an afterthought. And if it's an afterthought, you're never going to get the data that you want to see. So I always recommend being very thoughtful in the way that you're approaching these types of campaigns and understanding what you want to prove with them in order to make sure that you get all that great data that you're hoping to achieve.
Yep. I love that. And another thing that I really like as well is, once you have the UTM, you can really report on that and wherever your reporting is done. So that's another way that I was speaking to before, where it could seem a little daunting, but all you have to do is throw a UTM parameter on. It doesn't have to be that complex. Like back to that crawl, walk, run situation, like just start small. Don't try to boil the ocean.
Right. I agree. And I think that like the point on the slide about reference your core KPIs, like understand what your business is hoping to achieve and what the goals that are at top of the leadership team's minds, and use those in order to define your tests. So if your company really cares about pipeline, have your goals for ROI be driven by pipeline and make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in order to track and measure that.
I love that. And it's just so simple. When you said this to me the other day, it just clicked. I was like, why are we not having all of our customers do this? Which I think we should, is like that test you mentioned, like an ROI pilot is like so genius. So it's a no-brainer. How do you know if G2's intent data works? You A/B test, you run a campaign with one audience list and then another campaign, same content with specifically G2 intent audience, and see how those convert.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I think the best learning that you can do.
Yeah. And you could do it even, it doesn't have to be with like a huge campaign or a huge sample size. I mean, you could do it with 50 people, just make the test, the variable,
Yes. And absolutely have check-ins with your team referencing back to make sure that the conversation stays top of mind.
Yeah, exactly. And then continuing to iterate and run those reports. So I think those are some really good key takeaways. The biggest thing I will say before we keep trucking along is integrations. Like while G2's intent is very valuable on its own, you can't beat the way it pushes into those like CRM, marketing automation, ABM tools, reporting tools, things like that. So that's where you're really going to get that value. And even if you do it iteratively, it's the way to go. Awesome. So now we're going to get into some customer stories. One is very closely tied to attribution. So actually one of our customers, Dream Data, did some research and it showed that when businesses engage with review sites as their first touch, it cuts the customer journey down by 63%. So you'll see social, if that's the first touch, goes up to 200 plus days for the sales cycle. Starting with a review site, we're seeing 75. So drastically, obviously 63% cut there. And it just shows the power of attribution and tracking it, measuring it using G2. And then this one is my favorite. So this is a customer story from one of our customers, Better Cloud, who has been using buyer intent for exactly this, including tracking, measuring, attribution. And they saw outstanding results. So 98% of their total target accounts were surfaced via G2 activity. We actually have a really awesome team that can do a data match on the back end to see how many of their closed won opportunities or accounts actually had engaged with G2 before. And the match is almost always 98%. And then 36% faster open to close won deals. So again, that's just like that sales velocity is insane. And then a 2.5 higher average deal size. So again, going back to that ACV metric, you'll see that we hit on all of those there. We're going to be sending this out. I have the link to the case study here as well. But you can just see truly stellar results. And our teams are happy to get you set up, in the best way to make sure that you're really optimizing and operationalizing our offerings in the best way. Awesome. And without further ado, I've only done a couple of these, to be honest. So anyone feel free to come off camera, come off mic if you would like. I also can look into the chat. And then we have some freebies at the end. And it looks like a lot of the—
Hi, I have a question.
Hi,
I'm Megan. I was wondering, I had heard that you're able to integrate with Outreach to maybe create triggers in Outreach that will start sequences or drop maybe accounts into Outreach based on intent they're showing in G2.
Yeah, so if you're looking to add intent into like an Outreach or SalesLoft, you would have to define the ICP of the people that you want to target, but you can layer on intent within that.
Gotcha. Could you say a little bit more about how you would like label them?
So if you have like intent surging, you would want to say like, I target demand gen marketers at these types of companies so that you are targeting the right people within the accounts that are showing intent.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
great question. Yes. Thank you, Rachel, for dropping that. So partnerhub.g2.com/integrations will have all of your various integrations. So we have different integrations with similar tools outside of Outreach if you want to look into that. Same with like SalesLoft or something like that. I love it. Megan's got her, her CSM on the call. Matchmaking.
Hey, Anna. Hey, Sarah. Great
Oh,
job.
hi, Robin.
Hey, all.
Hey.
What's happening? I just love this. This is my favorite topic, just about. And I was just going to add, I think we all talk about sales and marketing alignment all the time. And many companies, and we're not wrong, we're not any different, still struggle with like that in real life. I think sometimes we have the best plans around, we're going to put in like Marketo Sales Insight into Salesforce, and then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's going to be awesome. And it's kind of like crickets, and sales doesn't always adopt those things. So I love that you covered Slack, and in the chat, we've been talking a little bit about Zoom Info Sales OS, because these are tools that sales is already using. They're already comfortable with, especially, Zoom Info Sales OS. And so the intent data coming in from G2, like Rachel said, it really is like, we would call it more middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel intent signals, because the people that are on G2 researching software aren't here for fun. So it's not just sort of like noisy signals from all over the web. It's people on G2 researching solutions like yours. So being able to show that on, a salesperson's target account list that they've set up in Zoom Info Sales OS is really, really powerful and really practical, and it's where they're already working. So these types of integrations can really drive that alignment, I think, in more effectively than the ways that we often try in marketing with like, we're going to put Rollworks in Salesforce, and there's going to be a widget for this and a widget for that. And it's kind of like, meh. So I just wanted to call that out, because I think it's more important than ever, especially in this economy.
Definitely. And we have another question. I don't know if one of you two want to answer, or if Casey, if you're still on the line, if you want to comment, but we got the question of, how do our BDRs use G2? Which I can
Hi,
take.
yeah, still here. I can talk to that. So I was just actually typing this out, so I guess I can erase that. But
I always do that.
in short, we use it a lot of different ways. I'd say the main use case for us, especially as of late, so as we've kind of went over, we are able to see when accounts are researching and comparing us to competitors. So that's the big one, because obviously if we know that they're looking into competitors, that means they're in market. We'd like to get our name out there, get them into our pipeline. And we also have visibility into our priority accounts to see which accounts are also researching, comparing them to their competitors. So we can use those signals to, send them a nudge and say, hey, is X, Y, and Z company in your pipeline? If not, we should get them, get someone from sales to reach out, or marketing to reach out.
I love that. Another use case, I don't think I had it on a slide, but I don't think I spoke to it, is targeting based on tech stack. So that's another way that you can create hyper targeted audience segments, and then also completely customize your messaging.
Yeah, and Cam, to talk through like how we operationalize it a little bit further. I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier on in the conversation, but since we use Slack, we have the Slack integration set up. And I know Robin mentioned that you can filter down to specific signals that you care about most. For example, we see comparisons to be the strongest. I think they're all strong, but comparisons is really going to be like that bottom of the funnel, someone that's in that decision-making stage. So if you'd like to just focus on those, you can filter it down to that. And then reach out to, like I said, get them in your sales funnel, and really add a lot of ACV to your pipeline when they're trying to buy in that decision-making phase.
We have a product at G2 called G2 Track that targets like an IT and finance audience, and our own buyer intent is powering most of the pipeline for G2 Track today. So as soon as I set up the Slack channel, I invited in the G2 Track SDR team, and then the AEs wanted to be in it. And they monitor it, you know, it's always on. And so we can see, oh, look, someone's comparing G2 Track to Tropic or Productive or whatever. And even though that's, you know, it's showing account level data, it'll say someone from Spotify is comparing, you know, G2 Track with Productive. Then we kind of go through, we click the link in the Slack notification, and it takes you into my G2. And there you can see, like, we also have Cognism enabled. You can do the same thing with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So right in my G2, it'll show you like suggested contacts that are in IT or finance to reach out to at Spotify, using this example. And, you know, the SDRs have gotten so good at crafting emails that are like not creepy, like, oh, we, you know, we're lurking and we know what you're doing, but just really, you know, I'll say gentle emails that reach out to who we think are the right people at these accounts, and say like, hey, you know, noticed you're researching SaaS management solutions, just wanted to introduce myself, how can we help? And that really works really well. And putting like a kind of a name, and I'm your contact at G2, I can help you with any questions you have. That's really effective. So yeah, no creep factor. We try to cut that down. But the fact is, I mean, it is a really, really powerful way to know that someone is in market and find ways to reach out to them. And then you can also automate and scale by integrating with things like Outreach, you know, SalesLoft, Marketo, HubSpot, you know, all the things. So it's really cool.
Yes, I love it. I'm so glad we have fellow G2ers on the line to speak to all of this. Any other questions or thoughts before I get into the freebies?
Hey, this is Dave. I got a question.
Hey, go for it.
We have Terminus, and we have an integration with G2 and Terminus, but we funnel a lot of information from Terminus into Salesforce, and some of that is intent, like, you know, Bombora. We get some Bombora, limited Bombora stuff through Terminus, but one thing is some of the other tracking information that we get from Terminus on whether it's page views or some certain signals from ads and whatnot. The question I have is we float that into certain fields and then create reports on that information so that a CSM or even a BDR or whoever can pull up a report, and it shows all the accounts that have done something in the last 60 days, for example. With your Salesforce integration, I know there's a little window that can go at the account level, which, as somebody mentioned before, is okay, right? We have a lot of salespeople who kind of skim down through an account and bypass our HubSpot window or our Terminus window. They may bypass the G2 window as well. But if we connected these two things, would some of this information be floated into fields that can be reported on in Salesforce reports?
I am going to get back to you on that. I am pretty sure yes, but Sarah or anyone else on the line, can you keep me honest before I validate that?
In terms of the G2 pushing fields, I think we should get back on the data. We don't utilize that at G2 today. But what I would say too is if you are running Terminus campaigns and you have any identifier of like which campaign that ad activity was coming from, I would denote that it was a buyer intent campaign so sales can see that.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the integrations section for the Salesforce page, and it almost shows that we might be able to do what I'm talking about, but it doesn't get quite there yet.
Yeah, the visual force page would be able to help you with data, but not in terms of reporting on like what you're saying, like an account list build.
Okay.
Great question. We can follow up too with anything else we might have from the technical side.
I have a quick question in regards to intent data and Slack integrations with BDR outreach. If it's cool with you all, my name's Cam, and I'm just curious a little bit about, let's say our BDRs are have their own territories they need to worry about, but you still want to push intent data. How do you essentially limit noise they receive? Because it's a lot of information. Do you have a good way to filter based on territories in Slack, or is there any advice you'd have for somebody that doesn't want to bombard your BDRs with noise that's not relevant to their territory?
Yeah, you can set up custom Slack channels and have certain alerts go to certain channels so that everyone doesn't get it for all in one. Like, for example, we have an enterprise alert channel and a mid-market alert channel. So that should reduce the noise for like a single channel with everyone's alerts in it. It'll just go for those specific segments.
That's amazing. All right. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Sarah. We have, and I can share a screenshot of what that would look like on the My G2 side if you are not a buyer intent customer, but you can filter based on location, company size. You can include or exclude specific companies. You can filter based on buying stage and awareness and things like that. So you can kind of customize that before you bombard everyone. Anyone else? Great questions. All right, so now for the good stuff. So, couple freebies. So, powerful gift of intent data. So our prospects and customers have loved this. So if you're not a G2 customer or buyer intent customer, highly recommend to sign up for a completely customized walkthrough. It's free. Our reps will basically get on the phone with you. They have already pulled the customers that most likely they have pulled, if they have this information, the customers that meet your ideal customer profile that have been searching you, your category, competitors within the past 90 days. And they'll give you a little sneak peek of that for you. So it's not like a lead list or anything like that, but they're showing you actual accounts that meet your ICP that are in the market. So we are going to link that in the chat. It already is. Thank you, Sakshi. So please feel free to share that with other folks on your team. It's been highly successful, really, really great way to see the data that you could potentially be getting. And then lastly, a few more freebies. These will also be linked in the follow-up email, but we have a fabulous ebook called The Big Book of Intent. It has data, it has metrics, it has use cases, it has infographics, best practices, customer stories, literally everything. So I highly recommend perusing that. Again, we linked the Partner Hub. Check out all of those integrations, G2U live and available. And then we have these monthly and the topics change. So feel free to suggest any topics you'd like to see us covered. And the speakers change as well. So we appreciate it. And it's been really great connecting with you all. If you have any other questions, feel free to follow up with myself, acharity@g2.com, or Sarah, if you want to give your email.
Thank you so much. I'll pass my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out, and feel free to connect on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure what your domain was. I'll put mine in the chat as well. Casey, Robin, everyone else from the G2 crew that was able to attend, thank you all. And don't forget to sign up for that 90-day look back. And thanks everyone for the attendance and the engagement. See ya.